Hello everyone, thanks for joining me. I'm Vrograg, your news anchor orc. I am recording from Deadwind Pass on the grounds of the haunted mansion known as Karazhan. Not because I want to be here, but because when I met a mage over in the forest troll village, I begged for a portal. I sadly didn't specify where, assuming that most portals go to cities. Turns out, some portals take you to Karazhan. Thanks, Medivh. Anyway, we have some news to get to, Market Watch, and a new program for some music coverage that I think raiders will find particularly interesting, and not just because of the music. But first, I'm the Orc, and here's the news. Our top news story is about a recent community post. On June 11th, Jamie announced an official delay to the Hardcore Challenge update that this network covered a few weeks ago. Though it has only been a few days delay, it would seem that the dev team are taking extra caution when considering any potential bugs, which is doubly important when a character can only die once. I reached out to community manager Akalix for some clarification and more details. Though the bugs that are specifically holding up the release are not known, I did get to learn about a few of the other adjustments that are coming that didn't make it onto my first news announcement about the hardcore changes. One is that Challenger mode is now going to be called Inferno mode. It might just be a simple bit of flair, or perhaps something more to read into. We'll have more time to speculate later though. One other naming tweak is that the various raid bosses cleared as a hardcore Inferno mode will now have their titles changed slightly from Conqueror to Vanquisher, which sounds a bit more powerful, I suppose. The other bit of hardcore related information I was privy to was that in lieu of the Still Alive guild, it seems like the developers are going to take an approach for an in-game indicator that will allow other peoples to know that a person is undergoing a hardcore challenge rather than just hoping that they're in the correct guild. The last little tweak that may or may not be coming is that the Blue Dreadsteed reward that I first reported on is still subject to change. There's not much to go off on that, but for now, be advised, it may not be blue. It could even be red, who knows. Also included in the announcement was a firm acknowledgement about the work the team is doing in 3 separate areas: class changes, endgame itemization, and player versus player content. For class changes, the most we can glean for now is that they are reviewing the results from the previous class changes some time ago, as well as the impact from world buff removal in certain areas. Though there does seem to be a new initiative to add to the direction of the classes by opening applications for more experienced players to contribute their feedback to the future of class changes. I once more reached out to Akalix for more details, which did help illustrate the situation a bit more. It seems in general, the overall approach is to try to make more specs viable and fun, not simply the best. That being said, these changes are not simply slated for 1.16.6, though some may drop when the patch is also dropped, so keep an eye out for that. To add, the notion of experienced players who will be giving their voice to coming class changes will be limited to vetted class representatives, and this is not for a lack of direction, but for deeper insights and a broader set of opinions. The other matter I gained some added understanding on was the work being done on endgame itemization. Jamie was liberal with the words buffing, nerfing, and reworking, but Akalix let me know that this work is being done through a calculated budget system. But, aside from rumors and the ever-lurking Dragonovi posting in Discord, little else is known for sure. While I always try to have the changelog available to do a news program, sometimes it's early and sometimes it's late, and this week it's been slow in coming. However, I fortunately have plenty of other programming available without the changelog, and trust me, I did check the bug tracker, and most of the recently closed bugs were people not comprehending how vanilla mechanics work, or complaining that they are having bad luck trying to get one particular item. With that being said, when the changelog does come out, I'll try to have the most impactful things covered on next week's edition, which, moving forward, might be a better approach, because oftentimes players haven't had time to experiment with the changes, and other times the changes don't actually get implemented even if they're on the changelog. And that leaves you, dear viewer, less informed than normal. And I won't stand for it. So for the changelog, I'll see you next week. Now, let's go take a look over at the auction house with Market Watch. Here at Market Watch, we're always trying to make information more digestible to you, the viewer. This week, I was able to calm down the machine spirits in my ever-growing spreadsheet back into order. So with many data points, I have chosen to split each followed commodity into two graph styles. One that takes a look at the longer month history, which averages cost by day, in order to better show trends, while the other will still track prices by the hour, but only looks at the last 2 weeks to catch the more ephemeral events of the item that makes the auction house go round. First, let's take a look at this last week's big mover that we've been tracking, Grom's Blood. This last week, it has spent 2 periods of time where it actually flirted with a 2 gold cost per herb valuation. And we can see on the month historic chart that this price average is beating those historic norms. It looks like there is increasing demands and limited ways to reliably get this commodity. Herbalists are going to make a fortune unless the Turtle WoW team does something to combat this scarcity. Over on the downturn side of things, we can take a look at Mooncloth, which has had a sudden fall in price quite recently. However, we do see on the monthly chart that this is likely a correction because tailors were finally able to meet the demand for the hype bubble that was created from speculation on the soon-to-come-out Mooncloth crafted sets. The rally we saw on Arcane Crystals on the 3rd of June was a noticeable spike in price, nearly reaching 25 gold a pop. However, it was short-lived, and that spike is still dwarfed by the surge seen back in mid-May, where prices were high enough and long enough to make the average price nearly 19 gold on the day. The takeaway seems to be that 16 is the new floor for the crystals, and that while prices might soar, there are enough reserves to flood back in to correct the market when need be. The ordinarily steady, large brilliant shards likewise had a big spike, but theirs was 1 day earlier, on the 2nd of June, peaking just below 9 gold. Historically, this was a huge price jump, as observed on the monthly chart, but since then, the price has regulated back between 5 and 5.5 gold. The king of volatility remains Cured Rugged Hides. These last 2 weeks, it has swung as low as the mid-20s and as high as 26 gold for one of the hides. Supply and demand has been tricky in the past with the leatherworking good, going on a veritable roller coaster ride of prices through the last month. If you're an investor or a buyer, beware the wild swings. We'll finish off Market Watch with the hardest to find herb, the Black Lotus. Though there were some volatility spikes between the 2nd of June and the 8th, it seems to have mellowed back down to just sub 18 gold, which is now slowly becoming the floor for the expensive flower. It seems that Black Lotus has had less volatility from server population explosions since it can be more readily farmed thanks to a server tweak some time ago, making the case that developer intervention can sometimes help stabilize supply and demand. I'd like to thank Super Duper Auctions for providing all the data I use here, but for now, that's all we have for Market Watch. Let's go back to my news alter ego, Vrograg, with our feature story. For our feature story, I had to go into deep cover, which is why I jumped and wall climbed my way all the way up onto the lower tower around Karazhan, just because I can't have people overhear some of the things I'm going to say out loud, because I think I found evidence that Outland is coming. How did I come to this conclusion? Well, it all started some days ago. I was contacted by a composer who works for the Turtle WoW team, a Hungarian composer by the name of József Kiss. He has the esteemed privilege of making the music for the upcoming 10-man raid for Lower Karazhan. The music is slated to release on June 16th. I was given advanced access to go through the soundtrack and give it a listen. So, I utilized the finest gear in engineering gadgetry to listen without anyone else hearing. Though I'm just a run-of-the-mill street beat reporter orc, I thought I'd give my opinion on it. And in short, wow, this is amazing. And we, the players, are absolutely spoiled to have such great work grace our ears. For anyone who has been to the version of Karazhan in Retail's TBC expansion, this music will tickle your nostalgia, while in places being so different in tone than the original Karazhans, one's imagination will just run wild with what Lower Karazhan has in store for the denizens of Turtle WoW. Since I have the tech to share, I might as well go a little deeper into the music as best I can, and it will help show you how I made the discovery that I did. Motifs of high society are carried with the sound of harpsichords, who in many places take the spotlight as a main character would, in tracks like Castle of Nightmares and Arcane Adagio. Strong notes of dissonance and ethereal soundscapes emerge from ghostly backing vocals like in Malevolent Monarchy and Endless Souls. Not a single vocal appears without sounding like it sings from the other side of life, cementing the true spookiness of Karazhan. Alone in its uniqueness is the track Cursed Crescendo, where strong operatic singing vocals can be heard hinting that the famous theater in Karazhan is still in full effect, though perhaps this time as an opera and not as a play. József himself said that he felt inspired by Hamlet when making this track, really making this a standout hit among the album. Perhaps just as powerful on the album is the track The Steward. The very name of the track would send lore shivers down the spines of anyone who knows about the dark history of Karazhan. Though purely speculative at this point, the track is so epic in scale and force, one can't help but feel as though they would be listening to this while facing the Steward of Karazhan himself, Moros. Just when I thought this album was done, it took me on a trip somewhere else entirely. For the first 2/3 of the album, the theme and motifs of the music always felt like one was in Karazhan. But then, the 12th track starts with the Unseen Frontier and everything changes. Gone are the dissonant ghostly voices and harpsichord. Now there are drums, powerful brass solos, and it feels like the music itself opens up. It stops feeling like a spooky haunted mansion and more like open war. Suspicions grew when I listened to Mystic Highlands, a track that sounds like it's right out of a B-side for TBC's Hellfire Peninsula. Here's a quick comparison if you don't believe me. I thought then that maybe I was reading too much into it, until I saw the name for the penultimate song for the album called Doomfire Stronghold. That for me just cements it. Nothing screams Burning Legion like a track called Doomfire Stronghold. Is this a not-so-subtle hint that Karazhan is in some way connected with Turtle WoW's version of Outland? It isn't like the Turtle WoW team has been subtle about it. They have been quoted in different places as having it in their plans, but the notion of Karazhan being the place where it happens rather than the Dark Portal is a paradigm shift with the lore. So before I get too deep in conspiracy and somehow gaslight myself, I invite all of my audience to listen for yourself and draw your own conclusions. This album will drop officially on June 16th, but if you want to have it first, make sure to use the pre-save link I've left below in the video description to get it immediately on Spotify. Or, if you can stand to wait, I'm sure there will be an announcement by the Turtle WoW team when it releases. I'd like to personally thank József Kiss for reaching out and giving me the scoop on this story. Make sure to tell him Vrograg sent you if you encounter him in social media. Great work, József, and thanks for helping to build Turtle WoW. Wow, what a tale. Who knew you could figure out so much about the lore through the music? I hope you found that little music segment informative. I am ever so tired from my journeying around, getting teleported places that I don't necessarily want to be. And it's starting to get dark out, so I think I'll just have to rough it out here in this pile of hay and get some rest. I'm sure I won't have any nightmares at all. But before I go, I wanted to thank everyone for joining me and learning about Turtle WoW. I always appreciate constructive feedback on the news show, and I hope to continue to give all of you the high-quality news recaps that the citizens of Turtle WoW deserve. Reach me anytime in-game, by whispers or by mail. Drop a comment down in the comment section below. I usually reply and look into people's questions time willing. Make sure to like and subscribe so as many people as possible can learn about this news program. That's all for now. Thanks for watching. I've been Vrograg, and you've all been wonderful. And remember, the deadliest weapon is knowledge.